Sounds a lot better now.
Awesome. Yeah, Dan, if you want to share, go for it. I see Ron just joined, right?
Yep.
All right, let me know you guys can see this.
Awesome. All right, so, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending our SCORE event today. Dan and I are very excited to kind of share our story. I would say that today's presentation is a little less than a formal presentation we would give to investors or partners or customers. This could be more informal, talking a little bit about our story. I'm sure you guys are interested to know how, young graduates from Youngstown State University decided to make a company and prosper, get through COVID-19 and 2020, and have the fortitude to kind of move forward and grow a business out of Youngstown, Ohio, which we get a lot that it's troubling compared to what has happened in the past with the decline of manufacturing with steel mills and what's going on in General Motors. So I think Dan and I, before we get into any type of discussion on Juggerbot 3D, we probably want to talk a little bit about ourselves, just to give you guys the context of who we are as people and where we came from and how we came to be as partners. So I'll take a stab at it first. My name is DiVencenzo. I'm the president and co-founder of Juggerbot 3D. I'm originally from Struthers, Ohio, and my background, even though I'm still quite young, Dan and I are both young, but it's as if we've lived a lifetime. And it's interesting when we tell people that we have a background, when most people say that when they're in, the other half of their life. But we've definitely obtained a background in many ways. And mine started in welding and fabrication. My grandfather started and ran Nick's Welding on the south side of Youngstown, and that was a good starting point for my life in manufacturing and engineering, to learn and become a production welder and have a trade under my belt before considering even going to school or going to start a company by any means. I originally thought I was going to be a doctor. I went away to school. Dan and I both, you're going to hear us both probably refer to us as the nerds and geeks, focusing on 3D printing and technology. But what's also interesting, I'm not trying to steal his thunder, is that we're both high school and collegiate athletes. We naturally were focused on athletics, and I went away for school in Toledo, or close to Toledo, Tiffin, Ohio, thinking I was going to be a doctor. Made my way back over to the Youngstown area to pursue engineering, and that's where I met Dan Fernback in a program that's called Industrial and Systems Engineering at Youngstown State University. So that's where the story kind of ends right there. Before we get into Juggerbot, I'll let Dan go ahead and give himself his background.
Thanks, Zach. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Fernback. I'm one of the co-founders and vice president at Juggerbot 3D. I'm from Boardman, Ohio, so just south of Youngstown, born and raised. Graduated from Boardman High School, and come from a background similar to Zach's as far as it being, a local blue-collar type of family. My father was a laborer by day, and nights and weekends, he owned and operated an excavating company. My mom was primarily in sales, and but leases from banking, so it's just pretty diverse there. And I think one of the things that Zach and I can both credit our entrepreneurial endeavors to is our coming up, how we were raised, kind of seeing that and seeing people working towards something they believed in, that they could, that was theirs, that they could be passionate about and have pride in, was probably a big driving factor for both of us. So when, unlike Zach, I did not think I was going to be a doctor at any point in time. I don't have the stomach for that, nor do I have the brain for that. But I knew early on that I wanted to make things for a living, or be in a business that was like that. And I also knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So about 2012, when Zach and I are both sophomores at Youngstown State University. Again, like Zach said, pursuing our undergraduate degrees in engineering. It was announced that America Makes would be located here downtown in Youngstown. And if you guys are not familiar with America Makes, it's the national accelerator for additive manufacturing, aka 3D printing, which was a catalyst to a lot of activity in creating Youngstown, Ohio as a hub for advanced manufacturing, specifically 3D printing, not just in Ohio or North America, but really across the world. And so, I think as we get into Juggernaut 3D here and tell a little bit more our story, some of this is about, how we were raised and what we're interested and passionate about, and also kind of being at the right time, in the right place. Right place, right time.
No, it's perfect. What's interesting is to Dan's point on right place, right time, and our backgrounds, both of us knew that we had to continue our engineering career by going out and getting the experience. Both of us are just driven when it comes to learning new things, and we have the confidence to be able to know that once we learn something, we can put that into action. And with that, it's like a constant, wheel. We're just constantly learning more, putting in action, learning more, putting in action, and it makes the momentum and everything go a lot quicker. I don't want to speak too much for Dan, but Dan landed a great position at what once was called Delphi Packard, now formerly known as Additive, and I was lucky enough to be selected to be a manufacturing engineer at a local stamping facility. And what's interesting is that being at the right time, right place at Youngstown State University at the forefront of, or the birth of additive manufacturing, it was like a rebirth, actually. 3D printing has been around since the mid to late 80s. Maybe not everyone knew about it, but it has been around, but it had a resurgence, like a bubble effect in the mid to late early 2000s. Us having the right time and seeing, America Makes grow and wanting to be part of it, but at the same time, not knowing if it was going to always be around or if it was just the talk of the town. We knew we were already on a path. Regardless of additive manufacturing, we were already on a path. We were going to become engineers. We wanted to go get jobs and secure ourselves in the workforce and make a reasonable pay and start families, buy houses. So throughout our story, Dan and myself, we weren't the traditional entrepreneur that you would hear or read about in Silicon Valley, or what they tell you to do. Even though we were told every single day to quit our jobs, live out of our car, eat ramen noodles, act as if we're still college students. I think Dan and I both looked at that as a battle of, I'm going to do it differently, and I'm going to prove everyone wrong. And you don't have to live that way. You can still create a company. Today, anyone on this call today can decide that they want to start a company and move forward with it. And that's because we're blessed to do so. We live in a fine country that allows us to do that. And if you have the drive, you can do that. So, for us, we didn't want to live that style. And we landed those jobs, and we moonlit Juggernaut 3D to start. It was just something that it was a night and weekend gig, kind of similar to what Dan was saying of his father being a laborer by day and running his own excavating company at night. And that's kind of how Juggernaut 3D started. Dan, do you have the next slide here? Just because I know these people like to see the background of Youngstown. Maybe that's too soon. All right, there we go. We can go to the overview. It's probably a good thing to note that we were also fortunate to have a world-renowned business incubator very close to us. That is a diamond in the rough. It was not something that's being actively talked about when you're at college. We like to tell people that the reason why Youngstown is booming, or at least is growing, and why we're part of the growth, is because there was a business incubator willing to grow the companies. There's a phenomenal regional chamber of commerce that's willing to support the area and support those research facilities, support those incubators, and then there's a working university willing to support growth and technology and innovation. So that consortium right there is like the foundation for companies like us and for us, in general. So Dan and I, even though we learn and we're active learners when it comes to sales and marketing and finance and legal, at that time, we were just forced to learn science and math. We just took 4 years of the hardest math we've ever had in our life. That's what's in our minds. And we're graduating college and we don't know how to start a company. You can Google it. And the best thing, Dan had a contact with the Youngstown Business Incubator. It was probably the best thing he could have done, which is just said, hey, let me set a meeting up because we're tired of working out of a coffee shop. We're tired of bringing our laptops to, Dan's, his father's and grandfather's wood shop to kind of tinker around with things. And we might need to look into some space and we need some help here. We need some advisement. And we pitched for the YBI to become a portfolio company and to kind of enter into that. But that was a good start. And I think if we're talking about today, starting a business in additive manufacturing, most of this conversation today is just starting a business in general. We just so happen to be focusing on additive manufacturing. That was a big part of our growth. And the foundation of everything was just having that support network like the Youngstown Business Incubator. And I'll kind of lend it over to Dan because at that point in time, I'd love to hear his viewpoint because he was also looking into accelerators and entertaining other locations. And I can remember 7 years ago, because this all happened in 2014, there was one point in time we were actually considering Colorado and New York and Pittsburgh for some accelerators. And I'd like to, let Dan chime in on how we kind of went through that process and how we started it.
Yeah, so being from here, first, I guess, real quick, for the couple people that are on the call here, where's everybody from?
New York.
New York?
Youngstown, Boardman.
Youngstown. Anybody else not from Youngstown?
Anchorage, Alaska.
Oh, wow.
Oh, nice.
Sweet. Okay, cool. Well, we're from here, right? So we're obviously gonna be biased to Youngstown. I shouldn't say obviously. We are biased to Youngstown. I know not everybody from here that's raised here is has I should say had the same experiences Zach and I have, but we always kind of lean towards Youngstown. So there was a time where when we decided that we were going to start this business, we really had to kind of step out of our own perspectives to see what was best for the company. And at that point in time, that's when you saw the first, I'd say really the first big wave of venture capital involvement in 3D printing since the 80s. There was literally, the unicorn term where there's billion-dollar or valuations of more than $1 billion for companies that are pre-revenue. That was kind of the thing that was happening. And we had to really evaluate where the best fit was. Fortunate for us, because we were always focused on industrial 3D printing versus, like science projects or the do-it-yourself kind of printing. And because of all the activity going on in Youngstown, this was the best place for us. The only thing that Youngstown didn't really have that would have been that was something we had to entertain at that point in time was a community of venture capitalists and fundraising activity. But what Youngstown does have in Northeast Ohio, for that matter, even Western Pennsylvania included, is a strong business community so that you can be paired up with people like Ron Emery. Like Zach said, we still are engineers, but I would definitely consider us after 7 years more competent business people. But Ron, how many years have you been doing business of different sorts?
How many years total in business, or what do you?
Yeah, what's your cumulative years of professional service?
Well, it goes back to 1975, so however many years that is.
Zach, when were you born?
Can't hear you, Zach.
91.
92. So
Yeah.
so obviously there is a lot we can learn from guys like Ron, and there's thankfully a community around here of people that are willing to support growing businesses in this area. And for that reason, as well as for the fact that there was so much momentum around 3D printing here in Youngstown, that there was an abundance of potential customers and suppliers within a stone's throw of Youngstown. It was an obvious choice that it made sense for us to build a company here in Youngstown. So to kind of pick up where Zach left off, we had pitched the idea of originally developing engineering grade 3D printers to the Youngstown Business Incubator. And Jim Cost was the CEO at the time, if you guys know Jim. And I think his exact response was something like, it's great to see a couple young engineers be passionate about something. It seems like a cool idea, but if you can't prove to me that you guys are solving real problems, the idea isn't worth shit. So at that point in time, the first 3 years, we really were developing product in this, again, the night weekend gig, but that first year was really about doing market research. So right off the bat, we went from going through, like Zach said, 18 semester hours of math and science and engineering to, for 2 or 3 hours, 3 or 4 nights a week, picking up the phone and doing market research and trying to just get a feel for what the landscape was. And so that was, in my opinion, one of the best, the most critical lessons learned, and one of the best things that we were taught early on from Jim and the YBI, which is to solve real problems.
So Dan, a question for you. So when you go back, and I've been with you guys a long time and watched you guys grow, and I'm really proud of the success that you've had, and hopefully I had a little piece in that. But how do you go back to the day where you guys were talking about building a better desktop printer, and how it changed to building what you build today, which is really cutting edge industrial type printer that is not, I think pretty unique in the marketplace.
Yeah, definitely.
Some of the technologies you're bringing to the table.
Absolutely. So for those of you who have not seen the kind of printers we make, Juggerbot 3D manufactures industrial grade 3D printers that are uniquely capable of processing a wide range of performance plastics. So without going through some of the details here, the machines we are right now promoting, which Ron mentioned, are called our Tradesman series. They're larger format machines, and they are addressing the largest barriers to the adoption of industrial 3D printing, that being lack of materials, specifically performance materials, scalability, so being able to print big parts or being able to effectively produce larger volumes of parts than what 3D printing is normally thought of, and reliability. Kind of going back to the fact that the Tradesman name is kind of a twofold thing. It relates to the type of products that will be made off of this machine. They're more similar to CNC pieces of equipment, like machining centers, versus traditional 3D printers. And the folks that will operate them are not button pushers or hackers, even though they can be hackers. They are tradesmen. They're 3D printing tradesmen. So the first machine here, if you see in the bottom right, is called our F332. It's a large format filament-based machine. The build volume is 3 feet from front to back, 3 feet left to right, and 2 feet from bottom to top. And the second machine is called the Tradesman Series P344. This is a pellet-based machine, so we'll talk about the differences in those two extrusion methods here in a little bit. The build volume on this is 3 feet from front to back, 4 feet from left to right, 4 feet from bottom to top. So to go to Ron's point, when Zach and I were probably juniors, we had received a desktop 3D printer when we were students at Youngstown State. It was in our little lab, and we had exclusive access to it. So naturally, we gravitated towards this new tool that could be used to build cool stuff, and started to figure out how the technology worked. what the business opportunities look like. So basically, how could we use that kind of a tool to anchor a new business? And after evaluating a couple of different business opportunities, everything from jewelry to consumer goods to tooling or engineering services, we were able to kind of, based on our own experience in our market research before graduating, understand that there was a huge gap between these desktop kit / do-it-yourself style printers and what at that point in time were the industrial 3D printers. So we were always, we always started the company with the mindset that we would be building functional business tools to empower manufacturers. The best first step at that point in time seemed to be smaller units that were centered around filament 3D printing, primarily because of where we gauged the current market, right? So you wouldn't find machines like this back in 2014. You really wouldn't find machines like this until you fast forward to like 2018, and you won't find a machine like we built them until when we launched them in the last January. Okay. A big part of the evolution there was definitely in part, how the market had evolved, where the perspective of 3D printing really lied, the different players that were in the market. One thing that we do that a lot of other industrial 3D printer OEMs do not do is we maintain a material agnostic system. So you don't have to buy materials from us. We don't make our own materials. We focus on being the experts in the machine and the process. And that allows us to partner very close with other material providers that are also in the space, which addresses some of the, again, going back to the bigger barriers to the adoption of 3D printing materials. Some of what we've always tried to maintain a focus on is, Zach and I take a lot of time to go through strategy and company culture and what our ultimate goals are as a company here. And so one of the North Stars from a technology development and commercial roadmap has always been the needs of the customers, the needs of manufacturers. So a lot of what has driven the change, I would say, from 2017 until this particular point in time has been catering to the specific needs of our end users. So for instance, the kind of parts that come off our machine, whereas a lot of 3D printers still today are really used for prototyping, which is a great 3D printing application. It's just, the tip of the iceberg. Our machines are used for things like production aids. So for instance, nesting fixtures for ultrasonic welding, production tooling, everything from patterns for sand casting. So basically revolutionizing a 5,000-year-old manufacturing process, to thermoforming molds, to even forming dies for like sheet metal forming. And now we're seeing an increasing amount of investment into end use parts. So without, again, not to skip around too much, but there are a couple inherent benefits to 3D printing that make it a really exciting manufacturing technology. And that is design freedom. Because you're making parts layer by layer, you're adding material versus most traditional manufacturing processes, which at least at some point in time starts by removing material to make a cavity or a part. You can create geometries that are not possible to create with any other manufacturing technology. So design freedom is a big benefit. It's something that people get excited about. On-demand manufacturing or rapid manufacturing is also a huge benefit. 3D printing doesn't require any specialty tooling. It doesn't require a 2-day setup. Basically, if you have a printer and an operator who knows how to create process parameters, all you need is a 3D model. And you can build a number of different things, especially vastly different products back to back to back. So that kind of agility, complemented by that kind of design freedom, will basically, the bet has been, will open up a brand new set of business opportunities that have never existed before. In some ways, it'll democratize manufacturing. In other ways, it'll basically usher in a whole new line of products that cater to more specific needs that better fit the needs of whether they be customers or even in some cases new services that'll pop up as a result of the technology coming to fruition. And we're seeing more and more people that are heavily investing in teams to basically to embrace new designs, to adopt new processes, and to set this level of validation so that it works time and time again and has an increasingly bigger role in the overall manufacturing economy. Answer your question, Ron?
Yeah, but I do have another one, and maybe you're gonna get into this, so I don't want to cut into your presentation, but one of the things that I think is intriguing as this technology develops is the filament versus pellet delivery systems in this. And can you talk a little bit about what it does to the production and how it actually enhances production?
Certainly, yeah. Zach, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. Before we dive into this, let me just take a step back. I think most people are intrigued in general about 3D printing or additive manufacturing, which is synonymous. It is the exact term. You're going to hear that it's already been thrown around a couple times. But obviously additive, you're adding material, and 3D printing is just something easy because people at times watch the Jetsons and you saw them open a microwave and something pop out, the remote control pop out, and it was 3D printed. What I want people to take away from this is that this is very interesting how 3D printing works. It's very simple to explain it to someone else, and there's 3 technologies in front of you on the screen, but I want everyone to know that there's actually 7 different types of additive, 7 different ways to 3D print something, to additively produce something. And the category that we fall under is called material extrusion, and it is an easy process to think about. Sorry, Dan, I don't think you're sharing your screen anymore.
I'm just giving you a better, hopefully, slide for your talking point.
Okay. Okay. So 7 of the additive manufacturing processes, you can see them down. I won't go through in each and every one of them. I may highlight a general idea of it. Material extrusion would be like all of you taking a hot glue gun. All right. Taking a hot glue gun, which I'm sure everyone has used in the past. And you can think about this. I have cold glue entering through the back. I've heated it up. I pulled the trigger and I extruded that cold material through an orifice, and more viscous, hot, molten material came out. Now, if you were to draw your name, you would write, Zachary down in a 2D format, and then raised your hand up an inch and wrote my name again, you just made a 3D printed part. So 3D printing sometimes is a terrible term. It's 2D printing layer upon layer. As a really simplistic way of explaining what 3D printing is. Now, all the other types of manufacturing really have to do with the medium, what type of material that you are 3D printing. Juggernaut 3D focuses on plastic, thermoplastic, and thermoset polymers. But there are other techniques and other technologies that focus on ceramics and metals and actually printing sand. And so through this, photopolymerization, powder bed fusion, binder jetting, what really separates them is the type of material it's processing. The way it's binding it, I just explained to you, a hot glue gun, it's bonding because it's hot, molten, it's going to cool, and then it bonded to itself. All right. There are other ways to enforce it to be bonded by maybe using some sort of curative or some sort of laser or UV light or lamp to cure it instantaneously or sinter it. And that's what all these technologies are. And we've given other presentations in the past, and we're happy to do so in the future when it comes to AM 101. But we could be here all day. I really just want to focus on material extrusion. If Dan would bring that one slide back up.
Yep.
So in material extrusion, that analogy I just gave of a hot glue gun will be a good representation of the first technology, which is on your left, which is called fused filament fabrication. It's pretty interesting. To be honest with you, it's not the newest way to, we didn't like create a new wheel here. This is a technology that has been used in the past. We just reinvented it. It's been reinvented. All right. So theoretically, it is extruding filament or strand similar to MIG welding. All right. You have a spool of filament. It actually looks like weed whacker string. It's being driven through a knurled roller device, and it's actually being extruded, pushed through a heating apparatus, and it's being just deposited in a 2D format, layer upon layer, which is making it 3D, which is making it a 3D object. And so we take that mechanism, we place it on a machine that can move front to back, left to right, up and down, and we are artfully and uniquely capable of processing, like Dan said, a wide range of plastics. You wouldn't believe it. It really is. There's like thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but thousands of different polymers out there in the world. The polymer that's on your mouse, that's operating your laptop, is different than the polymers that you would see outside and around your house, like the receptacles, because there's different requirements: UV resistance, chemical resistance, different hardnesses, different temperature resistance. Thousands of different thermoplastics out there in the world that manufacturers use today, and we built a vehicle that is capable of processing all of them at scale, meaning bigger parts, not just little small trinkets or toys. So filament extrusion, a very simple way to think about additive. Now, the center technology, fused granulate fabrication, is very, very similar to a manufacturing process called injection molding, or any other type of polymer process that requires you to take a pellet and extrude it using a barrel and screw technology to extrude that polymer at faster deposition rates. And injection molding is a manufacturing process that does that today. They do that quite well. They've been doing it for hundreds of years, where they have a screw in a barrel that is essentially auging and compressing and extruding that pellet form material. It's not in the strand. It's now chopped. Think of it like a strand, but chopped up. It's now little baby pellets. And you're doing the same thing. You're just extruding the polymer out through an orifice, a die, a certain diameter that you've told it you wanted it to be. We've now, the past 2 years, have developed systems that take that technology and mount it onto our industrial CNC equipment, and we're able to process material at much faster rates. So what Ron was asking was, why are there two different technologies that do virtually the same thing, and how does that actually attribute to the process, and why would you do one or the other? What's capabilities, what's cost, things like that. Filament is already in a very fine strand, and it's been focused on for quite some time to do very fine features and very small parts. All right, so fused filament fabrication has been something that's been focused more for high complexity of parts that have a lot of holes and passageways, internal passageways, very creative features, and mostly for smaller parts, because it can handle that. Now, when you go to try to print a very high resolution part very largely, it's time. It takes a long time to print. And so people take in consideration time in their business and how that results in dollars. And they say, I want to go faster. How do I go faster? How do I push out more plastic out in a shorter period of time? And we move them closer to fused granulate fabrication, which is going to allow them to push out the plastic almost 200 times faster than filament, which is massively faster. The caveat is what you lose in complexity. Because you can go faster, because you can push out this material, it doesn't lend itself well to do very small parts and very high resolution parts. You're now pushing out larger beads. So imagine trying to take a quarter size of a bead, a quarter size of material, and it'd be like trying to ice a very small cookie with a really big hot glue gun. You only have so much space, and how are you going to get all that detail in that little small space and be able to control all the variables? And you really can't. You need smaller tools to do smaller parts. And so as you're approaching additive manufacturing under this category called material extrusion, it really, you start to think about, what am I printing? Is it big? Is it low complexity? And when I say low complexity, I mean it doesn't have 1,000 holes riddled in it, and it's a very simplistic shape. Or is it a really big part, and a big mold, a big tool, and it's very low complexity? And you start diving down which technology is best for you. Juggernaut 3D develops medium-sized machines, 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet. So we already handle the scale portion. We have pellet and filament on both of those systems to support the customer's needs on the certain size parts and their particular applications. I mentioned the filament and pellet. You have to think about this. You make pellets first, and then you make it into filament. How do you make filament? You start in pellets. So in fused granite fabrication, from a costing standpoint, you're already starting at a point of time that the material is cheaper. So when you're doing big parts and your material cost is upwards of 50% of the cost of the part itself, you're starting to really think about what you're buying and where you're buying it from, and material cost is a big part of the equation. So, it's cheaper when it comes to purchasing with the materials in fused granite fabrication form. It's also more widely, more available options. Okay, so think about this. If I were to tell you that there's 5,000 different formulations of thermoplastic in pellet form, those manufacturers of those materials had to select out of their type of offerings to their customers what they were going to turn into filament, because it cost money. All right, so the Dows, the DuPonts, the BASFs of the world, the DSMs, the biggest material companies in the world, they didn't take their 1,000 pellets of material and say, I'm going to make 1,000 types of filament. They chose 1 or 2 or 3, and they've been launching it out to the market and seeing if it's something that they're, it's going to be adopted and they're going to be buying. So someone who's looking to get into fused filament fabrication, you only have a small option of materials to go for, because it's not the same level of what's pellet, because of what the other manufacturing processes like injection molding has been around for hundreds of years, and it's been already developed for companies to make pellets. The last technology on the right, very new. All right, this is completely new. I will tell you, it does not have the same amount of history as the fused filament fabrication or fused granulate fabrication. Direct ink writing is the processing of thermoset materials. And so to just give you guys an understanding, in the world of polymers, I'm going to kind of pretend like this is a triangle here. You have thermoplastics and thermosets. The takeaway here is to explain that a thermoplastic has the ability to be melted down into a liquid form, hardened into a solid form, and then remelted down. So it has that cycle of life where it can be melted, hardened, melted, hardened. Thermoset is like Gorilla Glue. You guys go to Home Depot or Lowe's or Ace Hardware and you bought Gorilla Glue. That is a thermoset material, and it tells you to mix it at maybe a 2-to-1 ratio. There's a part A and a part B, and you mix it up. And what happens? It hardens, and that's it. It's done. You are not separating those materials ever again. You're not remelting that material down and reusing it again. It is in its final state. So a thermoset material like a polyurethane, silicones, epoxies, expandable foams, once it's mixed and that chemical reaction is created, that's it. It's in its final state. So that's a pretty easy way to separate a thermoplastic and a thermoset. And you use thermosets every day in your life. You may not notice them, but the window stripping in your vehicle, any gasket along your door, and you wonder why, when it's raining, I don't get any water in my car. Well, it's because you have weather stripping everywhere in your car, in your windows, in your doors, in your trunk, in your hood. Those are rubber-like silicones or flexible-like polymers that's typically like a thermoset. But then the rigid but hard buttons in your car that's been overmolded or plated with chrome on your steering wheel, those are typically thermoplastics. A great demonstration of when those two materials ever come together would be like your toothbrush. Your toothbrush would demonstrate an overmolding process where they may use the hard, rigid part of your toothbrush as a thermoplastic, and the soft little area where your thumb goes and your forefinger goes in the back of it might be a thermoset for just kind of the softness of it, the less abrasive and more flexible. So in our world today, thermoplastics and thermosets are everywhere. And direct ink writing is the ability to process 2-part polyurethanes, 2-part epoxies, 2-part silicones. And it's very interesting because it's actually mixing it at the level. So you can see in that picture, where that blue area is actually where those two materials are mixing. And then they're depositing it at its state of where it's going to begin to cure. And so it's pretty interesting. I probably really hit deep on that technology, but Ron, if you have any questions on that, if I overlooked something or glossed over something that needs some highlights, and anyone else on this call, I know this is not like a big call here. We only have about 11 people on the call. Please, if you have any questions on any of those 3 technologies, now would be the time.
Yeah, I think, Zach, one of the issues when you look at this is this type of evolution of the extrusion technology and how parts are printed. This has changed dramatically over the past 3 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's what's interesting about this is, you know, I always use the example when I talk about 3D printing of, you know, genetic engineering, and when are we going to be able to print skin, and when can we print muscle, and when can we print vein material, and when can we print bone. And so we talk about replacement of body parts and people's health, and how can you make it better, how can you improve it. And I think it's this type of technology is growing exponentially as scientists are becoming more familiar with the way of deploying this into a solution. I just think that's impressive.
Well, it's also important for people to broaden the horizons and understand how this could be used in their everyday life today. You know, Dan and I caught our first big break. Our first big project was in 2017. And we were awarded, we were part of a project that was an awarded state project of $500,000. And Mercy Health was the large organization that participated in this program, and they purchased 3 machines from us. That was one of our big breaks. You know, we landed a project that not only got 3 machines sold, but also allowed us to participate over a 2-year period to demonstrate scan to print to fit, which is amazing. What you just said when it came to like printing skin and things like that. The thought that you can print custom glasses that fit you and you only, and custom earbuds. I know my left ear falls out, my right earbud stays in for the life of me. I can hit my head, it will never come out. But you know, it's because we're all different. And so we're the best example of what's called mass customization. There's millions of us and we're all different. And so additive technology, that's where it really shines, is having that ability to process one part that's uniquely just for you, and no tools were needed or anything like that. And so with our big break, we demonstrated printing prosthetic sockets, orthotic inserts, class 1 medical devices. And that's perfect because someone who needs a custom orthotic, you know, you can go to Dr. Scholl's and get something made just for you, cut the top of it so it fits your shoe, but is it really for you? No. You would go to an orthotist, get fitted. You were someone that maybe needed a hip replacement and you need a spinal alignment and your legs longer than one than the other, and you need a height in your shoe. You need something custom for you. And so we demonstrated in 2 years, working with a local orthotist, scanning patients' feet, scanning patients' appendages and molds that they made traditionally, reverse engineering that scan, printing those parts for that customer, and then fitting them. And that was amazing. And then we took it a step farther because we were nerds, and we embedded electronics and certain devices inside them and try to make apps and some cool things to get some direct feedback. But that's the possibility. And that was what really got us going. Even though, talking about starting a 3D printing business, and that's something Dan and I would probably always, our advice to people at times is to take those types of projects, take that type of R&D, but try to make sure it correlates with your core business. We've spent a lot of time researching and trying to participate in state and federal funds. That was cool. had to do it somewhat in 3D printing, but there has been times it's deterred us from a product line launch or deterred us from truly growing because, you know, we tried to participate in projects. That was us being scrappy. Our survival over the past 7 years of growing the company and keep making it bigger, we've took what we could. But I think when we, hindsight, when we look back, sometimes we always go like, man, if we didn't do that one and we focused on a product line, we could have got there sooner. So we knew that the medical industry wasn't going to be our biggest break. We knew that there were shortcomings. We knew that insurance played a massive role in the adoption of anything, and the timeline to get things approved, ridiculous. There's a lot of politics involved. This was us just demonstrating who we are, which is that we can develop a technology, we can meet the unmet need, standpoint, solving problems, and we use that as somewhat of the foundation to the next project, and the next project, and obviously building our products. One thing we've done pretty well is that we've always were good at selling our prototypes. So we've never really had made $100,000 in profits and then go, okay, we're going to go spend $100,000 on building the newest, brightest machine. No, what we've done is we used that $100,000 on outfitting our company and growing it a bit, and then found a customer and a partner to work on developing a product that we knew would be for everyone, but also be for them. And so for 7, to Dan's point, first couple of years really only focusing on marketing and beginning growing. But from 2016 or 2017 and beyond, we partnered. We did a lot of partnerships that involved them buying the machines, them knowing they were getting prototypes or betas and early stage machines, and that is what really got us going here. And so we like to talk about that, because when people are interested on how businesses are started, you do have to do it, whatever you have to do. We know now, though, as we're at a little bit of a position where we don't have to be that scrappy. Make sure it's focusing on something that really aligns with your core beliefs, your core problems, and make sure you're killing thousands of birds with one stone. Dan, anything you'd like to add on that one?
No, I think you did a good job. I do have a question for the group here, if that's okay. I'm not sure if it's that kind of platform, but I'm interested to see who here is an entrepreneur or would consider themselves an entrepreneur. I know we can't do a raise of hands, but anybody who would, could you just unmute real quick and say aye?
Aye.
I would consider myself with Window World.
Anyone else?
Is anyone trying to be an entrepreneur and wants to be an entrepreneur?
Yes. Yes, I would like to be an entrepreneur.
Okay. What about an intrapreneur? Is anybody familiar with the term intrapreneur?
Describe it, Dan.
So it is actually described by me when I was working at Delphi Packard. There was a gentleman named Randy Sumner who was in charge of the product lines for wireless charging and electric vehicles. So basically everything that is coming to fruition now, he's been driving for Delphi Packard for a decade, and it's cool. He operated his own little accelerator within this Fortune 200 company. And so when he caught wind of what Zach and I were doing, he pulled me aside one day and he's like, hey, it's really cool. If there's anything that I can do to help you out, let me know. And, he was able to provide some helpful insight here and there. But he also had a definition for doing that in a bigger company or within a company that already existed called entrepreneurship with an I. So basically it was just about having the same kind of mindset as an entrepreneur, but being able to leverage that within a larger company, not necessarily starting from scratch, which I totally believe in. I feel like people who are hustlers, for lack of a better term, right? You can be an entrepreneur, an intrapreneur. You could not have a job at all, but if you know how to, with that kind of mindset, to make a difference, to, you know, I hate to say get ahead, but get ahead or make an impact on your community. That's all some kind of subset of entrepreneurship in my mind.
Yeah, I think that brings up a good point, Dan. I think that when you talk about entrepreneurship, I liken it to a comment that my good friend Steve made on LinkedIn for me when he described me. And he said, you know, there are some people who think in the box. There are some people who think out of the box. There are some people like Ron who see no box. And so I think what you have to look at, all of those are good things.
Right.
There's not one that's bad or one that's worse than the other, because that's what makes the world go round. Whether somebody can function in a box or can think out of the box or see no box.
Definitely.
I mean, we sometimes forget the guy who can't see the box, but those are people who don't see, you know, an engineer probably wouldn't, you wouldn't say necessarily doesn't see the box, because, you know, he could think in the box, he could think out of the box. But not to be able to even see the box is kind of more of an artist rather than an engineering function, because engineering has rules. And somebody who doesn't see a box, you're basically saying they don't see the rules. And I think by not being able to see the rules really actually starts some really interesting discussions about what if. You know, that an engineer wouldn't necessarily have, because he knows the limitations, or he's been taught the limitations.
Right.
And so I think you got to remember that to be described as thinking in the box, out of the box, or not even seeing a box, they're all good things. They're just different.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. You know, whether, no matter what kind of analogy we use, in the box, out of the box, no box, with the rules, kind of going against the rules, it's all about really trying to see through in an honest light what the unmet need is, right? I know Mr. Moran and I go to the same barber.
Yeah, your hair looks nice.
Yeah, well,
Good job.
I'm due, but he had started, our barber, who is exceptionally talented in my opinion, but he started cutting hair at Youngstown State University, because he was making house calls. Basically, he was going in dorms, and that was how he kind of started building his clientele. So it wasn't a matter of doing something drastically different, or for that matter, even really, like, at that point in time, being able to showcase that he was a better barber, even though he definitely is. But he was making house calls. He was just doing it a little differently. He was there for an unmet need.
Yeah, and I'll add to that because I met him at Home Depot. I was walking down an aisle and he goes, "Hey, aren't you the guy from Window World?" He's like, "Here's my card. Come and get your hair cut."
Awesome. That's feet on the street right there. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was. I said I have to go to him now.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, I know that this is set till 7:30 and it's turned into a little bit of an open platform, which is great because it drives some good discussion. I did hear a couple of people, or at least I think I heard one person said, you know, they want to be an entrepreneur. Before, you know, and we just keep going and bore you to death with PowerPoint or presentations here. We like to at least feel good that you left here with something. We met the unmet need during this call, because we thank you for taking your time from 6 to 7:30 at night. You could be with your families. Why don't we just kind of maybe go around the room if we could and ask, what were you looking to get from this? And if, you know, we can answer something for you right now, or give you advice, or just tell you a failure that we did in 7 years, because we failed a lot. And if anything, we've learned from those more than our succession. So, you know, please, if you can, unmute yourself and ask maybe a question you were looking to get from this. It could be technical. It could be about business. It could be about money. It could be personal, whatever it is. You know, we want to help you guys out.
Uh, yes. Hi, my name is Kessler Dominique. What I was looking to get from this was to hopefully start up my own business and get like a understanding of how that process would come about. Not so much of the 3D printing, but of just starting up my own company, so to say. I didn't really know much of the printing business, so I just thought like if I came on, I would understand. I would get more of a grasp on what I would want to do.
Okay.
Where are you from, Kenzer?
Thank you.
Where are you from?
New York.
New York. Okay, that's cool. Well, I mean, I don't know if we have enough time to tell every bit about how to start the company. I mean, I'll give maybe 2 notes, and maybe Dan will give 2 notes, and see if it.
Can you repeat yourself? I didn't hear.
I said, I don't think we're going to have enough time to give you the
Yes.
full.
I didn't hear you. Can you repeat the question? Yeah.
Okay. I said, I don't think we're going to have enough time to give you the full plan of how to start a company, but I think Dan and I can give maybe 2 notes or 3 notes each, and then we can move on to see if there's anyone else who wants to participate. But I mean, first and foremost, I think hopefully you took from that is knowing what you're solving, because I think anybody can start a business, but if you don't have
it's lagging.
Yeah.
I keep swinging the door open and then please.
Yeah. Wait, so we're recording this too. So Zach, why don't you just keep going, and then Kessner will make sure to get that out, or you can contact us afterwards, and we'll be happy to talk with you. Go ahead, Zach.
Okay, Ken, you might need to mute. It may help with the lag. So go ahead and mute, and then we'll just continue. But essentially, yeah.
Yes, hello? See, it's lagging. It's lagging terribly.
Let me see if I can mute him real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see. Okay, so simply just know what you're solving. I mean, you can, make hot dogs and that's your business. But if no one in your area eats hot dogs and you're in an area of vegetarians, it might be pretty hard. Or you're going to have to think about making veggie hot dogs. Like if you don't have an audience, you don't have customers. Be hard on yourself. You may think you have a great idea. You may really think you have a business model, but you need to be your biggest devil's advocate and put your ego aside, put everything aside and say, hey, this is actually going to be something someone's willing to pay money for, which is interesting. Would you pay money for it? And everyone, you can say that someone's willing to buy it, but would you invest in yourself? So that's, I think, number one, having something worth, selling or producing. You need to make money, unfortunately. I mean, that's the way this world works. You can be profit, nonprofit, no matter what, they make money. And so to stay alive, stay afloat, you need to have something worth selling. And then my second note is that if you're not knowledgeable of how to, create your LLC or your corporation with your state, if you're not knowledgeable of creating all the documentation goes with it and filing your sales tax, doing any of that work, trying to identify an incubator or an accelerator of some sorts that's willing to give you that time and participate on calls like this that may give you 1 note at a time. Dan and I read hundreds of books, participated in hundreds of meetings and calls and webinars, and we went to everything to just learn everything and learn everyone else's failures so that we didn't replicate those. So those are my 2 things. Dan?
Yeah, the only thing to add, because the logistics of actually like starting a business aren't that difficult. There's paperwork that you can just do through the state. You want to make sure you're doing it right, to Zach's point, because there are different options you want to pick that's best fit for your kind of company. And then the other thing is just to kind of add, not only make sure that you're solving a real problem or meeting an unmet need, but also make sure that business is something you can be passionate about. There's a lot of times where I'm sure a lot of people that are in business can on this call can kind of relate, where it's tough to kind of motor through whatever you're going through, and the thing that keeps you motoring is the why you started it. You know, we are passionate about 3D printing. We're passionate about making stuff, but truthfully, one of the reasons why I'm sure Zach and I both, you know, on late nights, especially Zach's got a new baby where he's running on 2 hours of sleep, and he needs to complete project proposals and meet with customers. And that the thing that's fueling him is the impact that they have on the community. Same thing with Pat and Ron. You know, it's a matter of trying to find more things and understanding what really drives you as a person and what you can be passionate about. One of the things that I think for me is definitely people, other people. You know, Ron's brought us now a couple times into SCORE, and there's nothing that after we have SCORE events, even with a small group like this, I'm never more motivated to go back to work the next day and try to do something cool than after talking to other people who are motivated. So just find that, make sure those things align.
Yeah, Dan, one other thing, Kessner, if you want some information on how to start a business, if you go to YouTube and look up Youngstown SCORE Presents, there will be a link on there to a seminar that I did on how to start a business, which is really SBA material, Small Business Administration material. That's available for you to look at. If you would like to also call me, because I'm also president of the Youngstown SCORE chapter. If you'd like to call me, drop me a line at ronemery@gmail.com. And I'd be more than happy to talk to you or help give you the right kind of materials that you need to start to take a look at being successful developing that business. That's it, Dan.
It's kind of funny you say that, Dan, about your why. And I've recently, within the past 2 years, I've been asking myself, what is my purpose? And what it came down to was not only do I have my family's business to take over, but that's simple and easy. It was more of the fact that we have over 125 families that were helping support each other. And, you know, if I can keep this going and things go great, then we can have more people that get a paycheck every week, every other week, and things go good for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the responsibility of it is additional pressure, and I'm sure, you know, that kind of heightens the playing field, if you will. Everything matters a little bit more when it's not just on you and your family, even though that's already plenty of weight. So 100, you said 160?
125, including subs.
125. So 160 next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's great, man.
I mean, that's when it hit home for really hit. I know it probably hit home for Dan as well, but that really hit home for me. The first time we brought on an employee that wasn't of ourselves, it hit hard. It hit, I mean, now we just felt that it was like having a child. It was like, oh my God, this is all of our responsibility. And we truly felt that everything we do, every minute, the value of us is for them. And to make sure that they feel secure and they feel that they have a job here and they have an opportunity and that they're not having to think about another job or losing their job, and they can feed their family and have medical and have support. That was tough. And now, you know, we wish we were at 125. Pat, we will be there soon, but you know, we're at 6 full-time employees now with handful of contractors, handful of interns. We're growing, we're doing everything we can. We're excited for it, but yeah, that was a big part. I did see some notes coming through here from Latricia. I'm not looking to be an entrepreneur at the moment, but I do have people in my life who are. I have been very impressed with the speakers. Thank you. And also like learning about creative ways of making a living. So thank you, Latricia. Really appreciate that. And Kinzer, you wanted to know if there is any free way to get your LLC. Freeway, yeah, theoretically, yourself, you don't have to pay someone else to file your LLC or your incorporation, you can do that. You can go on, you're in New York, so you're going to have to be looking up ways to do it. For LLC, you can file through your state, or you can file as a Delaware LLC. And the main reason for that is because of the courts that remain in Delaware are dedicated more for small, mid-sized, and large businesses. You can file. So people always ask that, how the hell are you a Delaware LLC when you're in Ohio? We're not. We are Ohio-based LLC, but you could be a Delaware-based LLC living in New York. It shouldn't cost you anything other than the filing fee. You'll look up what New York's filing fee is for an LLC, and that's what the cost would be for you.
For anybody who's looking to start a business and there's going to be a partnership, now Zach and I feel like we're pretty lucky because we get along and there hasn't been any huge catastrophes. But there was a third Juggerbot co-founder, and it was a platonic split. It wasn't like we kicked him out or anything. He just kind of wanted to go a different direction, was in a different part of life. And we were advised heavy early on to have articles of organization in place beforehand, especially when, you know, everybody's optimistic and everything is going all hunky-dory. Map that out beforehand so that if perhaps something doesn't go according to plan, the agreement is written up beforehand. Again, we are in a fortunate position because we haven't really had to leverage that piece, but we definitely know people who have been in a tough situation. And it generally, unfortunately, is the people who suffer the most are the employees of the company, not even necessarily the founder. So just a word of advice.
That's really good advice. Yeah.
Hey, this is Ted. I kind of have a different question going in a different direction. How did you guys know when it was time to go perm, you know, go full time on this? Did it just kind of happen, or was it a conscious, we're quitting our day jobs and we're going to do this? Thanks.
Good question, Ted.
Yep. Good question, Ted. I think Dan and I would have wanted to quit our jobs the day we started it. We were just incredibly realistic people to know that we need to make some money and live and pay off our student debt. Starting a company right out of college is not the easiest thing. And selfishly, we wanted to continue our lives, start families, buy houses, do things like that. Engineering career can do that for us. We didn't put money into our 401ks when we started the company. We put it back into the company. That's what we did. Every 2 weeks, took a percentage of our paycheck, put it into the company. That's how we started it. Kind of, you know, us being the engineers we're super factual. We're realistic on how far money can take us. So there's benefits of being in the box or being constrained, and that's knowing your limits and what you actually can do. We waited for the moment to happen. We didn't make the plunge. We just kind of waited. We bid our time. We grew slowly. And if you were to talk to someone through the YBI, they would talk positively of us, but they probably would come back and say, well, they took 7 years to get to where they're at. People are going to question that. They're going to say, someone's going to sit back and say, you could have got better faster. Sure. Give me $1 million. I would have got there faster. That's absolutely sure. So money drove a lot of our decision making, because Dan and I were risky from the beginning. We would have jumped, but you got to do it when it makes sense. So money did drive that. We said we caught our first break in 2017. That project funded the ability for me to come on full time, and then acquire some interns. And we were just really intelligent on finding grants. I mean, I think in the first 4 years, we obtained over $350,000 in grant funding. And that's Dan getting rejected plenty of times at pitch competitions, but finally won them though. So yeah, you know, you have to have perseverance and go through it and fail a couple times, but we managed through that. And then in 2019, Dan came on full time. Once we knew that we were stable, we had a year's of salary, and you know, it is, you know, the fire is lit under you when you know you're running out of cash. The downside is you can make really bad decisions at that same time. It can like really light a fire under you, but you can be making really wrong decisions when you are money hungry and you are knowing you're running out of cash. It could changed the direction of the company. Dan and I joke all the time, but it was real. We had opportunities to take on investment right before COVID. It was actually the tail end of 2019. And we are so happy that didn't happen, because if an investor would have been through tough times during COVID, they would have probably found ways for us to sell, to do something different. But we persevered through a really tough time. And that's because of Dan and I's decision making and how we want to handle the company, not because we had investors telling us to make that decision. So we've been, even though we'll tell you we're risky, we I guess you can say we've been risk averse to some degree, but it's been very planned out, very intelligently. Dan, if you want to, maybe Dan.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add, Ted, is that part of it is like, when you know, and when the time there's been two really critical events to have us go full time. The first one was, like Zach said, we want a 2-year project that was going to be sufficient to sustain at least one person full time. And with Zach doing the majority of the engineering work for our team, it was a matter of bringing him on board, finish the development of our initial product lines, and then try to, get to a point where we can truly commercialize. For me, I got let go from my full-time job in 2019. And so I've always seen it as, and thank God it happened at a time where we were looking to hire 2 additional mechanical engineers. So, we kind of were able to work together to make that so that I didn't have to go look for another full-time gig. But to me, I've always seen it as fate's way of being like, dude, it's time. You gotta burn the ships. We're not going back. It's time to go full go. So, I don't know if there's ever a right time or a wrong time, but we did it. So here we are.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Carl, anything from you?
I guess I will ask, if you take what you know now, 7 years later, and put it into when you started the company, if you had that knowledge then, what do you think it would have changed in terms of the way that you started the company, or the trajectory and the overall roadmap of the business?
Have you ever heard of Bitcoin?
Yes.
We would have invested everything in Bitcoin. I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Zach. You can answer that question.
Well, I'm sure this you can't do this for every situation. You really can't, because hindsight's 20/20, and you can't go back and change things. We did what we had to do in the time frame. We can always look back at any part of the company, if it was technology, if it was the way we were selling, if it's the way we were marketing, if it's the way we're putting our time and resources. Yes, we would change. We would optimize it. We're constantly doing that. One thing that took a significant amount of our time, Dan was alluding to it when he was talking about what this area didn't have, and that was venture capitalists or risk-averse investors. And you hear what an angel investor is, and you know that they're the riskier style investor. They'll take $1 million, they'll split it up 10 ways. In their mindset, they know that 700, 800 of that $1,000 is going to go by the wayside. It's going to be a failure. But one's going to blow up, and maybe another one is going to give their money back. They're risky. Unfortunately, this area, those angel investors are non-existent. They're not angel investors. They're risk adverse. They want a unicorn. They want a golden ticket idea. Hardware companies are very difficult to invest in. That's what we are. And Dan can talk to you for 20 hours to tell you how many hours he put in to investigate investment over 7 years. And there's probably plenty of times he'd say that was a complete waste of his time. We spoke to investors that brought us along for months, took us away from our focus. And we spent thousands of hours creating spreadsheets, presentations, only to find out we weren't at the right time. Sometimes there was no reason at all. It was just a maybe talk to you later. Get to this milestone, we'll talk again. And get to that milestone, we'll talk to you again one more time. Finally, Dan and I said, screw this. We'll make our own money. We'll sell our prototypes. We'll sell our services. We'll sell our soul pretty much to make money than spend any more time talking to an investor that we know is not going to invest. Dan?
It's a great question, Carl. I think, just to kind of add, even with the amount of time spent in fundraising, we raised some money, some grants, some from what we would probably refer to more as like seed funding. There's a lot we learned in that process too, like not just the whole like fundraising process, but I think as people, you learn, and in selling, that's one big sales process. So admittedly, I don't know that I've always had the thickest skin. I don't know that I've always been able to kind of remove myself emotionally from a business situation as much as you can, as much as one can when you put this much time and effort into something. But that process itself was an eye opener for that case, which I think has helped at least myself now in the day-to-day activities of marketing and selling and just dealing with things that maybe kind of learning to not take things so personally in a business setting. Again, you can't always remove yourself from that, but there's little personal developments that take place with every step of everything we've done, whether they've been right, wrong, or indifferent to our trajectory. I think Zach and I agree with that. There's not a lot of things that we would really change drastically, with exception of, again, like, hey, we knew that this technology was the right fit, this technology is the wrong one, so we wouldn't do that one anymore. We just go right to this. But you don't know that until you're already in it, right? Good question though, Carl. I saw Christy just added audio. Christy, is there anything you wanted to ask or add? If you're speaking, you're on mute.
I don't think she wants to talk to us. No problem.
This is Ted again. I had a question too. I look at your website, which is tremendous. Wow. I thought it was, you said 6 employees. Is that right?
Yes, 6 full-time employees. And then
The website looked like 600 or 6,000. It's great. It's really professional. I noticed you guys do, you sell the machines and you also do printing, like service. What is that new, or has that been there all along, or how does that articulate with the whole thing?
That's been there all along. So the best way to kind of explain that, and I think that's even personally, everyone should find ways to make revenue and differently. And it could be like investing, it could be your 401k, it could be your IRA. I mean, we all talk about having backup plans and scenarios of what happens when something hits the fan and you have an alternative source. For us, we didn't have the funding to start building machines, so we sold our engineering services. We would design for anybody. Company called us from Cranberry to design. We designed for like a year server chassis to a company who was building a server for the Navy. Nothing to do with 3D printing. But we made like $23,000 to $32,000 in a short period of time that funded a machine or some more time or some marketing. So we sold our services, and we know our value and we know what we can do. We only had like one machine at a time. We only had like one machine in our office. We couldn't have the traditional take $1 million, bring on engineers, bring on all these people to develop a product and then build a plan and sell it. We had it kind of did it backwards. We like sold a service, took money, built our first machine. How do we make money from that? Well, let's print a part. Let's sell that part. And then show another customer, hey, guess what? If you had a machine, you can print that part. So buy a machine. And that just kind of turned into a business model where our focus is the machines. But in the process, someone before acquiring this technology wants to see a sample, wants to see it in real life, and we've sold it. And we said, okay, we'll print them apart. And then they may have said, well, can you teach me additive? Great, we'll sell you the service as well on teaching you additive manufacturing, how to print parts, how to bring it into your business, how to make it worthwhile. Then that evolved into, when you sell a machine, how, where does your annuities come from? Investors would yell at us all the time. You spend all this time with one customer, they buy one machine, you never talk to them again. How do you bring them back in? Well, we started offering installation, training of that equipment, service contracts that we can plan out for the next 2 years and actually have some re-involvement with that customer. And so it kind of created like a 3-stool effect: machines in the center, printing of parts, and the service, ancillary services of that machine, all centralized around a machine though. Our core competencies is developing technology. But because we're in such a still blossoming industry, we have taken it on ourselves to be advocates of the whole technology, and we educate to the nth degree. Sometimes we do it out of passion, like we're doing it today. We're explaining what additive manufacturing is. We're very passionate about it. But for someone who's interested in buying technology, we have printed parts of them as a service, not competing with any of our customers who print parts as a service. But hey, when you're looking, we build machines that range from $90,000 to $250,000, high dollar value machines, industrial grade machines. You're going to want to see what a part looks like before you make that investment. So that's kind of how that evolved. But it really started backwards. Like Carlos, what would you do different? Like if we had funding, would we spend our time designing server chassis? No way. We would have onboarded the core engineers, the marketing team to build up a product line, the production atmosphere to create the product, and then we would have had enough money to buy 100 of those and cut our costs down and have them on a shelf somewhere ready to deploy them. That's just not how it worked out. And we sold our time, bought our machines, and bought R&D, had to continue to create that revenue wheel, and parts turned into that kind of way.
Great, thank you. That's very good answers. That's very, very interesting. Thank you.
If you're good at something, don't do it for free. So you want to start a business, you're passionate about something you do, know your value, and it's a way to bootstrap. We found ways to bootstrap. We were unsuccessful getting funding. That doesn't mean we're going to give up. We'll find another way. If Dan and I had to sell T-shirts to sell T-shirts so that we can build machines, we would have done that. Actually, I think we did sell T-shirts. Probably some Juggernaut shirts.
All right. Go ahead. Someone was going to speak. Did someone want to speak?
Nope.
No, I guess not. Okay. All right, Pat, are we ready to wrap things up?
Sounds good. This was really great. I'd like to have lunch with you guys sometime.
We'd love to have you.
All right, I have Zach's number.
Pat, as long as you buy.
All right, yeah, all right. We're going to McDonald's, boys.
But listen, I want to say one thing before we wrap up here. Zach, Dan, thank you very much for enlightening us tonight. It's always good to talk to you. And I do want to say that, if anyone needs help with developing their business, that's what we do at SCORE. So we'll be glad to help you. You can always call me at 330-984-7395 at the Youngstown office of SCORE. I can direct you to local SCORE offices as well, or you can get Patrick. Patrick, what's your phone number?
330-559-7948.
Yeah, because Patrick's my assistant chair at SCORE. And Zach and Dan, thank you very much. It was a very enlightening discussion tonight, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us. Thanks for everybody for joining.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. Have a good day, Ted. I don't know what time it is over there, up there.
It's 3:30 in the afternoon.
3:30. Okay. Well, have a
Yeah.
good day.
Thank you too.
Thank you.